No one was watching, so she took his hands and whispered, "It's time for our bond." David Martinez never imagined his life would change so dramatically in a single day. As a communications specialist for Earth's diplomatic corps, he was used to translating messages between species, not becoming the subject of intergalactic politics himself. The morning sun streamed through his apartment window as he received the call that would alter everything. "Mr. Martinez, you've been selected for the Cultural Exchange Program," Director Williams announced over the hologram. "You'll be partnered with Lady Zara Velther of the Andorian Empire. The ceremony is tonight." David's coffee mug nearly slipped from his hands. He knew about arranged partnerships between humans and aliens, designed to strengthen diplomatic ties. But he never thought he'd be chosen. The Andorians were known for their strict social customs and emotional restraint. Their society valued duty above all else, and public displays of affection were considered inappropriate. By evening, David found himself in the grand ceremonial chamber aboard the Andorian flagship. The room was magnificent, with crystalline walls that seemed to pulse with inner light. Alien delegates from various worlds filled the space, their diverse forms creating a tapestry of colors and textures. The air hummed with the soft vibration of Andorian technology. Lady Zara stood at the center of the chamber, and David's breath caught in his throat. She was stunning in a way that transcended species barriers. Her skin had a subtle luminescent quality, shifting between pale blue and silver, depending on the light. Her hair was a cascade of deep purple that seemed to move with its own current. She wore elaborate ceremonial robes that marked her high status in Andorian society. What struck David most were her eyes. They were large and expressive, a brilliant shade of amber that seemed to hold depths of unspoken thoughts. Yet as he watched her during the ceremony, he noticed how carefully controlled her expressions were. Every gesture was precise, every word measured. She spoke the traditional vows in perfect universal standard, but there was no warmth in her voice, no acknowledgement of him as anything more than a diplomatic necessity. The ceremony itself was formal and brief. They exchanged symbolic gifts, spoke the required words of commitment, and were declared bonded partners. Throughout it all, Zara barely looked at him directly. When she did, her gaze was polite but distant, as if she were looking through him rather than at him. After the official proceedings, they were escorted to their shared quarters on the diplomatic vessel. The journey through the ship's corridors was silent, with Zara walking several steps ahead of him. Her posture was regal, her movements graceful, but David could sense an underlying tension in the way she held herself. Their quarters were spacious and elegantly appointed, with separate sleeping areas connected by a common living space. Zara immediately retreated to her section, leaving David alone with his thoughts. He understood that this was a political arrangement, not a love match, but the complete emotional distance felt more isolating than he had expected. For the next several days, they maintained a polite but formal relationship. Zara would acknowledge him when necessary, engage in brief conversations about their respective cultures, and fulfill her official duties as his partner at diplomatic functions. But there was always an invisible wall between them, a careful distance that she maintained with what seemed like practiced ease. David began to wonder if this was how their entire partnership would unfold. He respected her need for emotional boundaries, understanding that her culture demanded such restraint. Yet he couldn't help but hope that somewhere beneath that controlled exterior was a person who might someday see him as more than just an obligation. Little did he know that everything was about to change once they were truly alone. 3 weeks into their partnership, David and Zara were assigned private quarters on the neutral space station, where ongoing negotiations were taking place. It was the first time they would be completely alone, away from the constant presence of guards, advisors, and other diplomatic personnel. Their new quarters were more intimate than their previous accommodations. A single living space with soft lighting, comfortable furnishings, and large viewing windows that showed the stars beyond. There was only one sleeping area, though it was large enough to maintain separate spaces if they chose. Zara entered first, her usual composed demeanor intact. She surveyed the room with her characteristic careful assessment, her amber eyes taking in every detail. David followed, noting how she seemed to pause when she realized the implications of their new living arrangement. "This is quite different from the ship," David observed, trying to break the tension. "Yes," Zara replied simply, her voice maintaining its usual formal tone. "It is more private." For the first few days, they maintained their established routine. Zara would rise early, attend to her duties, and return in the evening for brief, polite conversations before retiring to her chosen corner of the quarters. David respected her space, but he couldn't help noticing small changes in her behavior. Sometimes he would catch her watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. Her amber eyes would linger on his face, as if she were trying to solve some complex puzzle. When he would turn to meet her gaze, she would quickly look away, a subtle flush of deeper blue coloring her luminescent skin. One evening, after a particularly tense day of negotiations, David found Zara standing by the viewing window, staring out at the stars. Her formal robes had been replaced by simpler clothing, and her long purple hair fell freely around her shoulders. She looked younger somehow, less like the imposing diplomatic figure, and more like someone who might be carrying the weight of the world. "Long day?" David asked softly, approaching carefully. Zara didn't turn away this time. "Every day is long when you must constantly monitor every word, every expression, every gesture." It was the most personal thing she had ever said. To him, David moved closer, close enough to see the tired lines around her eyes, the slight tension in her shoulders. "You don't have to do that here," he said gently. "Monitor yourself, I mean. It's just us." Zara turned to face him fully, and for a moment, her carefully maintained composure seemed to waver. "Just us," she repeated, as if testing the words. "No one is watching," David continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "No cameras, no advisors, no expectations. Just two people trying to figure out how to share a space." Something shifted in Zara's expression. The rigid control she had maintained for weeks seemed to crack slightly, revealing a glimpse of the person beneath the diplomatic mask. Her amber eyes searched his face, and David saw something there he hadn't seen before. Curiosity, perhaps even longing. "I ... She started, then stopped, her hand moving unconsciously toward his before she caught herself and pulled back. "It's okay," David said, recognizing her internal struggle. "Whatever you're feeling, it's okay." Zara's breathing became slightly uneven. "My people, we are taught that emotions are private things, sacred. To show them openly is considered ... inappropriate. But we're not in public," David pointed out gently. "No," she agreed, her voice growing softer. "We are not." The silence stretched between them, but it was different now. Not the careful, formal distance they had maintained, but something charged with possibility. Zara took a small step closer, her luminescent skin seeming to glow more brightly in the dim light. "David," she said his name for the first time without the formal title. Just his name, spoken like she was tasting it. "Yes, I think. I would like to understand what it means to not be alone." David's heart raced at Zara's quiet confession. For weeks, he had wondered if she saw him as anything more than a diplomatic obligation. Now, standing in the soft starlight of their private quarters, he was seeing a completely different side of her. "What do you mean?" he asked gently, not wanting to assume too much. Zara's amber eyes met his, and he could see the vulnerability there, carefully hidden but present nonetheless. "On my world, Physical contact is rare, formal. We do not touch casually as humans do. She paused, her luminescent skin shifting slightly in color. A sign David had learned indicated some form of emotional response. But I have watched you, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. The way you interact with others. The ease with which you offer comfort through simple gestures. I find myself curious. David felt his throat tighten with emotion. She had been watching him, studying the way humans expressed care and affection. Would you like to try? He asked softly. Zara nodded slowly, though he could see the nervousness in her expression. She lifted her hand, holding it out toward him, but not quite touching. David understood. He raised his own hand, positioning it so their palms were nearly touching, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin. We can start small, he murmured. Just this. Slowly, almost hesitantly, Zara closed the distance between their palms. The moment their skin made contact, she drew in a sharp breath. Her eyes widened with surprise, and David felt it too. A strange tingling sensation, as if her unique physiology created some kind of energy exchange. Is that normal? She asked, her voice filled with wonder. I don't know, David admitted. I've never touched an Andorian before. They stood like that for several moments, palm to palm, both marveling at the sensation. Zara's skin was warm and incredibly soft, with a texture unlike anything David had ever experienced. He could feel a subtle vibration, like a gentle electrical current passing between them. It's pleasant, Zara observed, a note of surprise in her voice. Yes, it is. Encouraged by her response, David slowly interlaced their fingers. Zara's breath caught again, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she studied their joined hands with fascination. Your skin is so different from mine, she murmured. Rougher, but not unpleasantly so. Your skin is incredible, David replied honestly. Like touching starlight. A soft smile crossed Zara's features, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. It transformed her entire face, making her seem less like an untouchable diplomatic figure and more like a woman discovering something wonderful. No one has ever described me that way, she said, and no one has been paying attention. They moved to the comfortable seating area, still holding hands. Zara seemed reluctant to break the contact, as if she were afraid the moment might disappear if she let go. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars through the viewing window. Tell me about touch in human culture, Zara said eventually. David considered his words carefully. For us, touch is a way of communicating without words. It can offer comfort, show affection, provide reassurance. It's how we connect with people we care about. And you care about me? The question was asked so quietly he almost missed it. David turned to face her fully, studying her beautiful, vulnerable expression. Yes, Zara, I do. Her amber eyes filled with something that might have been tears, though David wasn't sure if Andorians cried the way humans did. I care about you too, she whispered. I did not expect to, but I do. The admission hung between them, precious and fragile. David squeezed her hand gently, and she squeezed back, her confidence growing with each moment of connection. Would you teach me more? She asked. About touch? About all of it. About what it means to care for someone. About what it means to be close to another person. David's heart swelled with tenderness for this incredible woman who was brave enough to step outside everything she had been taught, to explore something completely foreign to her experience. I would be honored to, he said. Over the following days, David and Zara began a careful exploration of intimacy that went far beyond the physical. They would sit together in the evenings, sometimes holding hands, sometimes with Zara's head resting against his shoulder as she grew more comfortable with casual touch. David learned that Andorians communicated as much through subtle changes in their skin's luminescence as they did through words. When Zara was content, her skin took on a soft golden glow. When she was nervous or excited, silver patterns would appear along her arms and neck. When she was truly relaxed, her entire being seemed to shimmer with gentle light. "You're beautiful when you glow like that," David told her one evening as they sat together. Zara looked down at her arms, seeming surprised by the patterns there. "I cannot control it," she admitted. "It has been happening more frequently since we started getting closer?" "Yes." She looked up at him with those expressive amber eyes. "Is that strange?" "I think it's wonderful. You're learning to feel things you've never felt before. Your body is just responding naturally." Zara considered this, tracing one of the silver patterns on her arm with her finger. "In my culture, such displays would be considered inappropriate. We are taught to suppress these reactions from childhood." "But you're not being inappropriate," David assured her. "You're being yourself, the real you, not the diplomatic version." This seemed to reassure her, and she relaxed back against his shoulder. David had discovered that she loved having her hair touched, though she had been shocked by her own reaction the first time he had gently run his fingers through the purple strands. "David," she said now, her voice thoughtful. What happens after the negotiations are complete? After our diplomatic mission is over?" It was a question David had been trying not to think about. Their partnership had been arranged for the duration of the current diplomatic talks, which were nearing conclusion. Officially, they would be free to return to their separate lives once the agreements were signed. "I don't know," he admitted. "What do you want to happen?" Zara was quiet for a long moment. "I want—" She started, then stopped, seeming to gather courage. "I want to stay with you, not because of duty or diplomatic necessity, but because I choose to." David's heart soared at her words. "Even though it would mean going against everything you were taught about appropriate behavior?" "Especially because of that." She lifted her head to look at him directly. "You have shown me that there is more to existence than duty and protocol. You have shown me what it means to feel truly alive." David cupped her face gently in his hands, marveling at the trust she showed by not pulling away. "Are you sure? It would mean giving up your position, your status in Andorian society. What is status compared to happiness?" She asked. "What is position compared to love?" The word hung between them, spoken for the first time. Love. David's thumb traced across her cheek, and he saw her skin shimmer with golden light at his touch. "I love you too," he whispered. Zara's eyes widened, and then she smiled, that brilliant, transformative smile that made David's heart skip. "Say it again," she requested. "I love you, Zara Velther." "I love you, David Martinez," she replied, as if testing how the words felt in her mouth. They came together then, lips meeting in a kiss that was gentle and tentative at first, then deeper as Zara's confidence grew. When they finally parted, her entire being was glowing with soft golden light, and David had never seen anything more beautiful. "No one is watching," she whispered, echoing his words from weeks ago. "No," he agreed. "Just us." "Then show me," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "Show me what it means to belong to someone completely." The final evening of the diplomatic talks arrived with a mixture of celebration and uncertainty. The negotiations had been successful, creating new trade agreements and cultural exchange programs between the human and Andorian governments. But for David and Zara, success in the public sphere meant facing the reality of their private situation. They returned to their quarters after the formal ceremony, both unusually quiet. The weight of impending separation hung between them, unspoken, but present. Zara moved to their usual spot by the viewing window, but instead of her typical composed posture, she wrapped her arms around herself, her luminescent skin dim and subdued. "The transport arrives tomorrow," she said without turning around. Yes, David replied, moving to stand behind her. I am expected to return to Andor Prime, to resume my duties, accept a position in the High Council. David felt his heart clench, but he kept his voice steady. That's what you've worked your whole life for. Zara turned then, and David saw tears in her amber eyes. He hadn't been sure Andorians could cry, but the evidence was clear. I do not want what I have worked for my entire life, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I want this. I want you. I want us. David closed the distance between them, pulling her into his arms. She came willingly, melting against him with a desperation that spoke of her fear that this might be their last night together. Then stay, he said simply. It is not that simple. My family, my obligations, my entire life. Your life is what you make it, David interrupted gently. Not what others expect it to be. Zara pulled back to look at him, searching his face. You would have me give up everything I have ever known? I would have you choose happiness over duty, if that's what you truly want. But only if it's what you want, Zara. I won't ask you to sacrifice everything for me. The honesty in his voice seemed to strengthen her resolve. She reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. When I was a child, she said softly, I used to dream of touching the stars, of leaving my world and exploring the galaxy. As I grew older, I was taught that such dreams were frivolous, that duty was more important than desire. Her skin began to glow more brightly as she spoke, silver patterns emerging along her arms and neck. But you, she continued, her voice growing stronger, you have shown me that dreams are not frivolous. You have shown me that I can touch the stars, that I can have both duty and desire, purpose and love. David felt his throat tighten with emotion. What are you saying? I am saying that I choose you. I choose us. I choose love over duty, happiness over status, freedom over obligation. The words were barely out of her mouth before David was kissing her, pouring all of his relief and joy and love into the contact. When they parted, both were breathless. Are you absolutely certain? He asked, needing to be sure. I have never been more certain of anything in my life, she replied, her entire being now glowing with brilliant golden light. But I have one request. Anything. Zara took his hands in hers, interlacing their fingers the way they had that first night she had learned to trust his touch. Bond with me, she whispered. Not the formal political bond we were given, but a real one. A choice made in love, not duty. David understood. In Andorian culture, true bonding was a sacred act, reserved for those who chose each other freely. It was said to create a connection that transcended the physical, linking souls across space and time. No one is watching, he said, echoing the words that had become their private promise. No, she agreed, her amber eyes shining with love and trust. Just us. They came together then, not as diplomatic partners fulfilling an obligation, but as two souls choosing to become one. In the soft starlight of their private sanctuary, witnessed only by the cosmos itself, they created something beautiful and eternal. Later, as they lay together in the gentle afterglow of their bonding, Zara traced patterns on David's chest, her skin maintaining its golden luminescence. I sent a message to the High Council, she said quietly. What did you tell them? That I have found something more valuable than status or position, that I have found love, and I choose to follow it wherever it leads. David pressed a kiss to the top of her head, breathing in the unique scent of her hair. And where do you think it will lead us? Zara lifted her head to smile at him, that brilliant, transformative smile that had captured his heart. Everywhere, she said, to all the places I dreamed of as a child, to all the stars I longed to touch. Together. Together, David agreed, sealing the promise with another kiss. Outside their window, the stars continued their eternal dance, bearing witness to a love that had begun in duty, but had blossomed into something far more precious. A bond chosen freely, cherished deeply, and destined to endure across the vastness of space and time. No one was watching, and that had made all the difference.